Really fascinating, interesting article here by Ann Garrison, posted at the Black Agenda Report. I'll link it down below. Title is The Planet's Problem for Hell. Samantha Power, who Biden has appointed to lead USAID. Just when it seemed that Joe Biden's coming administration couldn't be more of a horror show, Axios reported that he's likely to appoint another monster from the deep, violent know-it-all Samantha Power to head U.S. Agency for International Development. Basically, another regime change arm of the U.S. government, more or less. I rescheduled my piece on contact tracing's potential to further empower the surveillance state for next year's first Black Agenda report. Instead, updated my 2015 piece, Samantha Power, Africa's Problem from Hill. As I said then, with Power serving the second of her 4 years as President Obama as U.S. ambassador to the UN, she was on a mission to save Africans from African savagery. But her largesse extends to all those who need American bombs to calm ethnic strife. She wants you to call 1-800-GENOCIDE so she can alert the president to send in Marines or other U.S. Special Forces. As head of USAID, she'll be in the perfect position to wield foreign aid as a cudgel for beating foreign heads of state till they line up behind U.S. empire, which she understands is a never-ending campaign to stop genocide and defend human rights. Indeed, Power actually seems to believe this, unlike those who shamelessly invoke human rights but know full well that U.S. foreign policy is about economic exploitation and or domination of any non-NATO nation that dares to raise an independent head. Totally on point. The Education of an Idealist memoir published in 2019, she writes of how she all but emulated in her own burning self-righteousness while reporting from Bosnia in the 90s. Quote, I've never been without opinions, but my certitude previously had to do with seemingly trivial issues like an umpire's bad call in a baseball game. Now, as I researched and reflected on real-world events, I seemed unable to contain my emotions or modulate my judgments. The subject of Bosnia came up and someone innocently described the conflict as civil war, I would erupt. It's genocide. Anti-war activist and writer David Swanson wrote of one of my favorite headlines of 2017, Samantha Power can see Russia from her padded cell. In the Counterpunch piece, he shared highlights of Power's outright overwrought performance at the Atlantic Council, where she rallied at Russia for aggression, threatening the U.S. and the global rule of law in Ukraine, Syria, France, Germany, Montenegro, and beyond, demanded that NATO be on hair-trigger alert. Padded cell indeed. On December 14th, CNN Pentagon correspondent reported that a Russian missile drill had just triggered a false alarm at a U.S. military base in Germany. You can only assume that Samantha Power is reassured they're locked and loaded with all the latest world-ending nuclear weapons. If anyone knows of a psychological professional's analysis of Power's mind as public manifest, please send it to me at the address in my bio tag at the bottom of this article. David Swanson also cited William Blum's list of attempts to overthrow governments. Asterisks were successful, none of which soften Power's missionary zeal. China, 1949 to early 60s, Albania, East Germany, Iran, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Syria, Egypt, Indonesia, British Guyana, Iraq, North Vietnam, Iraq, Cambodia, Laos, Ecuador, Congo, Brazil, France, Dominican Republic, Cuba, Bolivia, Indonesia, Ghana, Chile, Greece, Costa Rica, Bolivia, Australia, Angola, Zaire, Portugal, Jamaica, Seychelles, Chad, Grenada, South Yemen, Suriname, Fiji, Libya, Nicaragua, Panama. I mean, you get the idea. There's a lot there. I focused on her human rights rage in Africa, having successfully advocated for U.S.-led NATO wars in Libya and Syria, huge disastrous consequences as those countries are still experiencing, to stop the next Rwanda. She then had her sights set on the tiny, impoverished East African nation of Burundi, which had dared to contract with the majority Russian firm to mine its nickel and form strategic alliances with Russia and China. WikiLeaks Diplomatic cables reveal that Western interests had their eyes on Burundi's nickel for decades before its government under the late President Pierre Nkurunziza signed with the Russian firm, which they said had offered better terms. And of course, why wouldn't they do that? Burundi shares the Hutu, Tutsi, Tawa ethnic divisions with neighboring Rwanda and a highly geostrategic border with the resource-rich Democratic Republic of Congo. Power, along with Human Rights Watch Executive Director Kenneth Roth, who's horrible in his own right, was stridently warning that Burundian President Nkurunziza and his political party were plotting Tutsi genocide. Power shrieked for regime change. Of course she did. But Russia and China had Burundi's back on the UN Security Council. Good for them. And it survived to celebrate its removal from the UNSC's agenda this month, which means that its sovereignty is now relatively secure and there was no genocide. Much of Power's career is based on her historically inaccurate, decontextualized, and oversimplified account of the 1994 Rwanda genocide, during which she alleges the U.S. stood by. From that point on, she moralizes, U.S. citizens must be upstanders, not bystanders. Never again can we fail in our moral duty to stop the world's backward peoples from massacring one another over ethnic difference. She wrote a Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The Problem from Hell, America's Age of Genocide, in which she expands on her Atlantic article on Rwanda, Bystanders to Genocide, and calls America to arms. Yes, I'm sure military interventions all over the world, that's going to stop the genocide from happening. That's going to make the people in those countries, whole. That's going to make them safer, dropping bombs, as we've seen. And she supported the fucking intervention in Libya now, where they literally have open air slave markets. They still don't have a functioning central government there. It was one of the most prosperous countries in the whole continent of Africa. That's the real world results of this type of ridiculous foreign policy that Samantha Power supports. It's sick. Power fails to note the U.S. stood by intentionally, not indifferently, in Rwanda until U.S. ally General Paul Kagame won a war of aggression begun 4 years earlier. The Rwandan death toll was many hundreds of thousands higher than the Pentagon had projected, but otherwise everything went according to plan. 2 years later, the Congo Wars began, and the U.S. and the U.K. unseated France as a dominant power in the African Great Lakes region. U.S. troops now appear only as advisors south of the Sahara, although mass atrocities prevention and military planning handbook describes the swift surgical deployment of U.S. Special Forces as a blueprint at the ready. For now, there are plenty of African troops serving under U.S. military command and grateful to receive the salaries that boost their middle-class status, though they'd be considered poverty wages here. In 2011, President Obama appointed Power to head the Mass Atrocities Review Board. All but a few African nations now have soldiers serving with AFRICOM, the U.S. Africa Command, and Burundi's belligerent neighbor Rwanda is one of the greatest troop contributors. One complication of the Burundian situation is that Burundian troops serve in Amisom, Pentagon-led African Union mission to Somalia. Fighting and casualties had already taken place on Burundi's tense border with Rwanda in 2015, and 5 of Burundi's ruling party leaders, including the Burundian security and intelligence chief, were assassinated. This made it clear that President Nkurunziza, who is hugely popular with the country's rural Hutu peasant majority, could be the next target. That greatly alarmed all those who remembered that the assassination of 3 Hutu presidents within 2 years, 1993 to 94, precipitated the Rwandan and Burundian bloodbaths of the 1990s. Samantha Power decried the assassinations on both sides in Burundi and threatened sanctions, but she laid all of the blame for the Burundian crisis on President Nkurunziza. Why? Because he had claimed constitutional right to be elected twice by universal suffrage, then won by 69%. However, she spoke not a word of protest in 2010 when Rwandan President Paul Kagame claimed the same right and won by a thoroughly implausible 93% majority. Or in 2011, when President Kabila claimed the same right, then claimed a victory that delegitimized all Congolese institutions, according to Carter Center's election observer mission. The regional and ethnic tensions, which were then most fiercely focused on Burundi, are real, and the mass violence often horrifying. Let me read that sentence again. The regional and ethnic tensions, which were then most fiercely focused on Burundi, are real, and the mass violence often horrifying, but the world's industrial military power elites are always in play behind the news. And Samantha Power's latest African anxieties, however righteously and rapidly she conceives them. And that was from Ann Garrison. Pretty interesting article here. Again, this is just the type of imperialist, interventionist hacks that Biden is stuffing his cabinets with. And again, the only decent nomination that I've seen Biden make so far is Deb Haaland for Interior Secretary. Besides that, it's a lot of these same hacks, these same retreads from the Obama administration. Let's do... Get out of here. Ah! Why are you not working? You devil. Alright. Samantha Power. This is what the moral logic of humanitarian intervention. Jesus Christ. There's nothing moral or ethical about what happened in Libya. I mean, for fuck's sake. Here we go. 3 women, loads of lies, and the destruction of Libya. Middle East Monitor. Clinton, Hillary, Susan Rice, which I believe she's part of the cabinet as well. What do you know? Everybody but Clinton. And then those 3, Clinton, Rice, Samantha Power, the 3 principal advocates for war against Libya in 2011, setting the North African nation on a free fall ever since. Demonstrations broke out against the government, what became known as the Arab Spring. However, Libya's promised spring turned into a destructive autumn when Gaddafi was murdered and Hillary Clinton actually joked about. And Libya was left anguishing in lawlessness courtesy of the 3 women. It's disgusting. Let's see. Where do we have... Let's look for Power's part. Let's see. Where do we go? Oh, well, it doesn't mention Power. Where do we see Power? Power played the history card to create fear of failure and inaction by President Obama. She exaggerated events in Libya, even comparing it to the Rwandan genocide in '94, which nearly 1 people were killed. Jesus. Invoking Rwandan experience was designed to provoke the strongest reaction by Obama, a Democrat himself, as Bill Clinton was under whose watch the Rwandans' mass killing unfolded. Let's see. Susan Rice in Joe Biden's cabinet. Susan Rice, Joe Biden cabinet. So it'll be more of the same. These more humanitarian interventions. I mean, cabinet picks from Obama era mean bold new thinking. What? Jeez, what the fuck? How? They're just fucking these interventionist, imperialist, capitalist fucking retreads. Bunch of dog shit. What kind of fucking title is that? Seriously? Fuck off. I don't want this thing. Where's the exit out? There we go. Get out of here. Go. Okay. Let's see. Director of White House Domestic Policy Counsel Susan Rice, who is Obama's national security advisor. There you go. But again, just a bunch of fucking retreads from the Obama administration who never met a war they didn't like. Just more of the same, and it's not surprising, but still just disturbing all the same. Peace, much love. If you like the video, like the damn video. If not, hit that button. That's cool too. Subscribe for more content. Peace, love.